Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional owners of the land on which I stand today. Also the Darug people, the traditional owners of the Riverstone electorate. I pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Peace be upon you. Madam Deputy Speaker, until recently I had no political aspirations. I've gone from business owner to community advocate to politician. My businesses revolve around visual communication. I'm a commercial photographer, a studio owner, a drone pilot, and a project manager for online databases. I started advocating for the needs of my community as the Vice President of both the Northwest Business Chamber and the Riverstone Neighbourhood Centre. I was drawn into politics because of the frustration I felt from shouting at the outside of this building and realising that if I really wanted to make a difference, I needed to get a seat on the inside. Well, not just a seat, this seat. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, "Now I am here, I must do the best I can and bear the responsibility of taking the course which I feel I ought to take." I'm proud that I have now taken this seat and I have no intention of being here just to keep it warm. I'm proud to be a part of this government led by Premier Chris Minns, with equal representation of women and with MPs who have sworn on the Bible, the Quran, the Tanakh and the Bhagavad Gita to serve the people of New South Wales. This is a community that reflects the diversity, this is a government that reflects the diversity of my community. I'm the fourth generation of my family to have had a lifelong connection with Riverstone. Established in the 1850s, Riverstone itself has a lot of history that should be celebrated. The cenotaph in the heart of town was one of the first 5 to be built in Australia. I've watched as this region has changed from semi-rural farmland into one of the fastest growing areas in the country. I grew up in Schofields on acreage with my mother and sister. My parents divorced when I was young, something that was uncommon in the 1970s. And as a single parent, my mum struggled to make ends meet. Through my grandfather, Dinky Knight, I learned to value people by the content of their character instead of the contents of their wallets. My children, Oliver and Madeline, whom I love beyond measure, were raised in Riverstone. Like me, my mother and grandfather, they attended Schofields Public School. They continued on to Riverstone High School, as I did. But the home I knew as a child was a very different place to the one that it's become. The oval at Schofields Public School, where I played soccer at lunchtime, is now covered in demountable classrooms. Bushland, where I once rode dirt bikes as a teenager, has now transformed into housing. Market gardens are now unit towers. The changing landscape has not been a gradual transformation. The population of 2762 has grown by over 300% in just the last 5 years. The projections for this same postcode, which had a population of around 5,000 people in 2016, is to grow to around 150,000 in the next 10 years. The population explosion has seen Riverstone become a far more diverse electorate than it was a decade ago. Whether it's religion, culture or economic status, I doubt there's another electorate with the range of different needs than Riverstone. For example, there were over 10,000 new migrants voting for the first time in this year's election. While campaigning, I met with no less than 5 new migrants who were voting for the first time anywhere in the world. They've come from countries that had repressed their right to vote because they worshipped the wrong God or practiced the wrong cultural traditions. It's a testament to our democracy and the rights afforded to all citizens of our multicultural society that people can vote in free and fair elections for whoever they choose, regardless of their beliefs. These new Australians have come to build a better future for their families. However, when it comes to building new estates, the mistakes of the past are being repeated. Almost 50 years ago, in his inaugural speech as the member for Mount Druitt, before he became the first member of Riverstone, Tony Johnson spoke of problems created by the former Housing Commission in the early 1970s. Tony said the Commission was creating suburbs and providing housing for young families, but of course, there were no facilities to back up the population explosion. In his speech, he referred to the lack of sporting facilities, community halls and libraries. He believed an important part of his job as a local member was to make sure that with the massive increase in population brought about by development, those facilities must be provided to address the many social problems that come with a large population. And I must say, I agree. The issue Tony was best known for as a local member was the need for a hospital. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The concerns I have for my community and my politics stem from a simple worldview. I believe the rights in society are more important than the rights of individuals. We should all do our work with the welfare of others in mind. While this aligns with Labor values, I joined the Labor Party because of my experience with a local MP when I built a photographic studio in Riverstone. My business partner, Paul Pearson, and I made the decision to move our business to Riverstone to take advantage of the NBN. We built some of the first databases capable of delivering broadcast quality video over the internet, and upload speeds at the time meant it would often take more than a day to load a single 3-minute clip. The NBN meant upload times changed from days to minutes. The move allowed me to expand and diversify the business by opening the Good Egg Studio, a space designed to photograph cars and trucks. It's the only one of its kind in Sydney. I reached out to the local elected representatives asking for any advice they might have about starting a business in Riverstone. The federal member for Greenway, Michelle Rowland, was the only one to reply. Over the years, we have developed a strong and enduring friendship. As a sign of respect to her, I joined the ALP. I can confidently say that without Michelle, I wouldn't be here today. After a chance meeting with Mike Shervington a few years later, I became involved with the Northwest Business Chamber, which led to my involvement in the Riverstone Neighbourhood Centre. I started to realise how under-resourced the northwest of Sydney had become, thanks to my dear friend and community leader, Sue Lawrence. I went from business owner to community advocate. Sue's unwavering advocacy for the needs of our community and our repeated attempts to get government to pay attention to what is happening in Sydney's northwest ultimately is what led me into politics. Our work for those needing social support and within the business community revealed to me the real-world consequences of the change in approach to development in the Northwest Growth Area. A patchwork approach to new estates, particularly those north of Schofields Road, replaced cohesive, holistic plans seen in the creation of suburbs like Stanhope Gardens and the Ponds. Additionally, new developments routinely deliver about 50% more yield than originally estimated. Now, for the uninitiated, yield is a euphemism for people. We need to stop thinking about people, about families, as yield. I'm convinced failure to recognise the difference between yield and community is one of the major reasons there isn't enough infrastructure built to support the population. As a government, we must return to creating communities instead of just houses. Yes. Our communities need better connectivity. The road network is choked. My studio clients would often complain about how it would take less time for them to travel from the eastern suburbs to the Richmond Road exit of the M7 than it does to get from Richmond Road to Riverstone. This is due to a failure to upgrade the existing road network and also to provide local job opportunities, forcing people to travel outside the electorate for work. The public transport system is under-resourced, further encouraging people onto roads that haven't been upgraded to cope with the increasing traffic. Failure to build the metro through to Schofields to connect with the T1 line has meant the car park at Tullawong is full by 7:30 a.m, largely from people driving their cars from the Hawkesbury. Local commuters are leaving for work 2 hours earlier than necessary just to get a parking spot. The hospital, promised for over a decade, still doesn't exist. Sick and injured residents are forced to go to Blacktown, Nepean or Westmead. It's no coincidence the emergency departments in these hospitals are increasingly struggling to cope. And it's not even as if the dramatic increase in housing stock has helped to reduce housing prices. In fact, the experience in Riverstone suggests the opposite is true. Instead, exponential growth in supply has resulted in exponential growth in prices. And it's not just the hard infrastructure my community needs. there are emerging social problems as well. The number of residents needing emergency relief has outpaced the increase in population. The spiralling cost of living has created the working poor. Mortgage stress and rental prices have left families, some with dual incomes, unable to buy food or pay for electricity. I've been approached by a range of community groups struggling to cope with the problem of domestic violence. Victims are often afraid of the consequences of speaking out and the shame that it could bring. There is precious little support for victims, especially for women from South Asian communities. There is even less for men. I've spoken with social workers from Relationships Australia who counsel convicted perpetrators. They recently had their funding cut, which meant they had to stop rehabilitating the people they were helping mid-program. Many of those who didn't complete the course ended up reoffending. In addition to the trauma inflicted upon their victims, the price to the state is often higher than the cost of the programs, because offenders usually end up in court, sometimes in prison, and all too often their children end up repeating the cycle. We need more support to counter domestic violence, not less, including specific programs that deal with the understanding of unique challenges faced by CALD communities. The problems we face are not limited to new residents either. In April last year, the third major flooding event in under 2 years inundated houses in West Riverstone. I was part of a recovery effort led by the Business Chamber and the Neighbourhood Centre to help the people who were again forced to rebuild after floodwaters destroyed their lives. I worked alongside local community members hosing out the homes of families whose lives were devastated. I cleaned out houses and delivered food with Humanity First and the Ahmadiyya community, who rallied to help wherever they could. One of the families put their most valuable possessions in the roof cavity of their home for protection. Unfortunately, the floodwater rose above the roof line and destroyed their most precious personal items. I'll never forget the sound as a sodden toy crocodile thrown from that roof hit the ground, or the mother who raced to recover it. "Not crikey, Steve Irwin gave me that!" And her tears began to flow again. Rebel and Rachel Hanlon, friends who are the epitome of community service, and the Blacktown City Lions Club, my club, put on a free barbecue just outside the Riverstone Village Shopping Centre. Sue and I set up a flood recovery shop where those forced to rebuild could come collect household items, clothes and food donated by the local community. Sue and a team of volunteers staffed the shop while I collected furniture given by people wanting to help and then delivered it to those who had lost everything. My experiences during those months, working alongside so many diverse and remarkably generous community groups, proved to me that when community works together, it can accomplish great things. The people still living in West Riverstone are almost evenly split between renters and homeowners. Renters live there because they can't afford to live anywhere else. Owners can't sell because their home is getting rezoned to be either a road or a park. This rezoning has been proposed for years, yet authorities won't resume the property, and a release date for the land has yet to be determined. They're stuck, left to await the next flood. Of course, dedication to community isn't enough to gain a seat in Parliament. There are many people who helped me get here. I was encouraged by the member for Blacktown, Stephen Barley, and the member for Londonderry, Prue Carr, who showed a willingness to fight for the investment and legislative change needed to help the people who have chosen to call the northwest of Sydney home. They, as well as Courtney Husos, have provided a continual support, guidance and encouragement to help me make the change from community advocate to politician. Bob Namva, Dominic Offner and the team from Labor's head office demonstrated a solid resolve from the very beginning to win Riverstone and to back me as the person to do it. Most of all, without the love and support of my partner Deborah, none of it would have been possible. She inspires me to be the best person that I can be every day. She is my muse. It also takes a team of dedicated, skilled campaigners, and there is nobody better than my campaign director, Paul Mills. Paul has been a friend and supporter of mine for years, and his leadership of the team was instrumental to my success. Alex Hemmer who has been an invaluable friend well before my career in politics began, deserves special praise. He worked tirelessly during the campaign, both on the ground and coordinating volunteers. He is someone I know I can rely on for many years to come. I thank Harish Velji for his introductions to multicultural leaders. They, along with Ramesh Parker, Jordan Heddy, and an incredible team of volunteers, put on an extraordinary effort and incredibly long hours throughout the campaign. To Gavin, Wayne, Rhonda, and the army of phone bankers, door knockers, letter droppers, street stallers, and train station attendees, I say thank you. To the Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Buddhist, and Christian communities, I say thank you. To the union movement, who fought with everything they had to protect essential workers, in particular the Transport Workers Union, Unions New South Wales, the Nurses and Midwives Association, the Teachers Federation, the CFMEU, the Health Services Union, and the Public Services Union, I say thank you. Most of all, I want to thank the residents of Acacia Gardens, Quakers Hill, Parklea, Stanhope Gardens, Kellyville Ridge, The Ponds, Schofields, Tullawong, Narimba, Vineyard, and Riverstone. I'm honoured to be elected as your representative in State Parliament. You voted for positive change, and I take that responsibility very seriously. Everything I do with all of my heart. My personal story reflects the hopes and aspirations of many people in my electorate. I'm a visual communicator, a trained observer. During my career, I was fortunate enough to travel extensively, both nationally and internationally. I've worked with multinational corporations, government departments, and charity organisations. I have experience with people from a broad range of cultures, races, and religions. I've had lunch inside the Burj Al Arab and from a street market in Dili. I've jumped out of planes and hung out of helicopters. I've driven cars around the Nürburgring in Germany and ridden motorbikes through the jungles of Cambodia. These experiences have taught me far more than how to use a camera and how to raise my elbows.
What are you doing?
Among the many things I've learned is that no matter where you come from or how much wealth you have accrued, all we want is a better life for ourselves and for our children. A life that gives the next generation more choices for their future. I'll be working tirelessly to ensure our growing community is provided with the infrastructure and services we deserve. I'll be working to ensure local job opportunities are created so people don't need to spend hours every day just getting to or from work. I'll be working for the families who need the schools they were promised but haven't been delivered. I'll be working towards delivering the hospital that is so desperately needed. I'll be working to improve public transport options, including buses, trains, and the metro. There are these other reasons why I stepped away from my business and stepped up to represent my community in Parliament. It is the sum of a lifetime of experience and a desire to build a better lifestyle for my community. Archimedes reputedly said, "Give me but one firm spot on which to stand and I will move the earth." Madam Deputy Speaker, here is the spot on which I stand. Thank you.